Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast Who Am I? Our website is whoamipodcast.com, where you can see all of our past episodes. Today's topic will be on differentiating thoughts, emotions, and sensations, and why that is important and healthy to be able to do. And we will talk about our own experiences with that and why we think it would be a good exercise for everyone to learn to do.
Yep.
This is something that I was recommended to do several years ago when a therapist noticed that I was mixing, I was diluting, just being confused about the differences between thoughts, emotions, and sensations. I went along with it. I didn't really know what the purpose of the exercise was. It's interesting how I'm still working on that. I think I keep discovering more about how my thoughts, emotions, and body work. And so the exercise isn't finished. I just kind of started it a few years ago.
It's a lifelong process.
Yeah. I think life would be boring if I just totally understood myself. But I don't need to totally understand myself to have to feel like I know myself and I can love myself and I can just engage in things without being certain about this particular question. And I can also start to help others without having the full picture for myself. On this podcast, we try to help others or inspire others by sharing our own experiences and sometimes just our own thoughts and theories.
But the beautiful thing is you don't have to be a master and expert at these things. Like, we don't have any qualifications as such in these things. We just the university of life, where you can just share experiences and knowledge and understanding and question things as we go. It's being able to teach and help people and understand ourselves. That is enough to just be able to talk about it and chat about it, and like, we don't have to master these things, because technically we probably never fully will. Maybe we will. Hopefully, the hope is we will. Completely centered and fully aware and be able to evolve to that sort of state, I guess. But we don't need to. Ultimately, we don't need to. We just need to have a little bit of awareness, and it starts with that self-awareness. And we're all at different stages.
We're on this meta level right now, not even getting into the topic, but I enjoy it. I want to go a step further. You reminded me of something when you said when you put your hands together and acted like an Indian guru and talking about full awareness or higher awareness than people on average. That seems to be such a mystical, exotic thing, but the more I learn about it, the more I feel how realistic and achievable it is. Because apparently there are people who, and they're not that distant from us. Like I follow someone online, someone from Austria that is like a guru. I think he's very wise, without even being older. I think he's a couple of years younger than me, but I guess he had certain experiences that gave him insights, probably painful experiences. And he says, or other people say about him, that he goes through life with an awareness that you have about yourself and others when you're in deep meditation. But he's fully awake with open eyes, busy, and has this kind of perspective and calmness. And another guy, Silva, I forgot his first name, but there's the Silva method that he came up with in the 50s and 60s, and I'm reading his book right now called Mind Control, and it's not about controlling other people's minds but your own. And I like how he uses a very scientific approach to explain what's going on rather than this Eastern mystical. He just
Yeah.
says, I'm an electric engineer, and so I have to do with waves and frequencies all the time. And that was my approach to understanding the brain better. And so you can use an electroencephalogram, EEG, to measure the electric frequency of the brain, some electric wave going on in the brain. I don't know much about it. And in regular awareness, I don't remember the exact numbers, but we're at one stage of brain activity. In meditation and in sleep, we're at another one. And then you can go even deeper if you exercise it a lot. And by doing meditation, I have been able to calm down my brain, be not as susceptible to just impulses and spontaneous emotions like fear and anger, and been able to be more objective and just observant about what's going on.
There seems to be a amount of time, I don't know what that is, in the brain where you go from having an impulse to a conscious control of it. So, you have your impulse to, let's say someone calls you a name or offends you or whatever, and the impulse is to, let's say, in some people, to shout back and be angry. And so you have that split second in your brain to go, no, that's not how I am going to choose to respond. But that training that to be like that with all different kinds of emotions and sensations and thoughts is difficult. Again, it's a natural process, I think, that we just go through. You can accelerate it through meditation and stuff, but I think it's a slow process. It's a slow process if you just let it happen. And again, I think it takes people a lifetime, and some people don't even achieve it. But if, like us, we're trying to consciously accelerate that
Right.
learning,
we don't want to wait until we're old.
No,
and
we want to be centered and grounded now. Again, those terms are very interesting to me. Centered and grounded. That seems to be words that is used a lot when talking about, I guess, awareness and harmony and serenity of oneself and one's being.
Yeah, I could see centered coming from the idea that you can go too much one way or you can go too much the other way.
Yeah,
like being too introverted or being too extroverted, and you want a healthy middle.
Yeah.
And there are tons of like psychological tests and indicators that I've seen that look that way. Like, are you this way? Are you that way?
Yeah, 10
and
point
there's
scale
an
either side, and
extreme.
then
I like how you mentioned that instinctual impulsive reaction that we do, that we make to stimuli from the outside, and it sounded like animalistic the way you described it, right? And we want to have more insight into what it is, maybe why it's there, because it can often be there from childhood trauma.
Yeah, trauma is a massive one that affects our behavior.
And we would like to change it, like I don't know, remove it, replace it. And a lot of people call this part of us programming, or the program in our brain, and that we can reprogram our brain.
Yeah,
which
you tend to have a lot.
To me, that always sounded spooky. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
It's like someone messing with my head, or I am generally afraid of hypnosis for that reason as well. I don't trust anyone enough to have that much influence. Maybe that just shows you and the audience how naive I am and how little I know about hypnosis, because I have heard reports that you are in control, and the only thing that the person doing the method with you can only suggest things. They cannot control you the way that Hollywood movies sometimes say they can. So maybe it's not as scary as I make it out to be, but I am working with self-hypnosis, which just means meditating and analyzing and making changes where possible or available. Have you any experience with that?
I stay clear of hypnosis as well. Like, I have an inner fear of not necessarily what the other person will do to me, or could do, or what power they'd have over me. That is a concern, but more so that what would come out of me, what stuff I would say or do.
The beast within.
Yeah, like I'm sure it'd be fine, but like who knows what's roaming around in our subconscious that we probably may not be ready for to play with.
Do you ever find yourself twitching like this when you have a thought that's uncomfortable?
No, I have a overstressed central nervous system, so I twitch for other reasons. But no, like I can see why that would happen.
Yeah, I do that, and I've learned that it's because something is coming close to the surface, and I am not ready for it. At least a part of me believes that I'm not ready for it, because, and by that I mean it would be too painful, or it would mean that I die. You know, that's a fear I often have for things. And so one way of counteracting that is to, well, first of all, calm down, you know, become more objective, and then tell myself that I believe I am ready now. Like that fear that you have might be from childhood, when you may not have been mature and emotionally strong enough to just take this amount of pain. But now I am.
Yeah.
And then that might make me more ready to, the thought might come out, or it might not. That's something I cannot control. I could just invite it, you know, I can just make myself ready for it.
Yeah, we do tend to suppress a lot, and therefore it's hard to know when it's okay to experience something. Like I'll go into this week. Probably it's a bit personal, but last week and a half, there's just been stuff going on that I have had to understand, or try to understand what emotions I have, and then shut them off, because it's required me to function and still do what I need to do without having an emotional sensation overload. And at some point, I will hopefully lower the barriers and have an emotional response to what's been going on, and, you know, have a cry or have a think about things, or fear and anxiety, and then process those and get through all that. But like it always kind of freaks people out that I can do that. That I can just I never used to, but yeah, I went for a few experiences years back that allowed me to learn how to do that. And it's dangerous. Like if I slip into the non-empathetic side, then yeah, like I have to pull myself back to the emotional again, center it, not be at an extreme, but just center it.
Is that because you're tempted to just stay cut off of permanently?
Yeah, because it's safer, it's easier in some ways. But the danger is that if I go too far to the extreme, I then lose my empathy, and then my depression takes control, and blah blah. I won't go into the two details, but yeah, I can go down that route. It's quite interesting.
Okay.
But I've learned that through the extremes. So I've been through the extremes to understand it, and then over practice of just being like, okay, this is a overwhelming experience for me. I need to, I don't know, be there for other people, or just carry on my daily tasks. Let's put those emotions to the side and then process them when I have the chance, whether it's in bed at night later, like resting or whatever. And I find it kind of fun. I like being able to do it. It's something that
the cutting off, or the resting and processing?
All of it. The cutting off, like being able to control. Again, I'm obsessed with self-control, and like, control is the wrong word, but self-processing, and self, like, I don't know, whatever the word is, because often I would get overwhelmed emotionally. Like, again, trying to understand, like going back to what we're talking about again, how sensations, thoughts, and emotions affect us. Because if they overwhelm us, we can't function. And therefore, you know, we have to be able to find out what they are, first of all. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about, is like, how do you figure out what an emotion is? Like, okay, so like the difference between fear, anger, confusion, being upset, sadness, like they can all just mix up and get, yeah. And again, the same with like happiness, joy, bliss. It's interesting, I can describe more sad emotions than I can happy emotions.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's worrying.
Before we go into a list of different emotions that I prepared a graphic for, I wanted to say I can identify with a lot of what you were saying. I used to cut myself off emotionally from others or from the situation that I couldn't bear as well, without knowing about it. So I was totally unaware of it.
Yeah,
I remember my boss telling me later, when these things became more serious and prevented me from being able to work, that whenever we got together to talk in her office about work, the first few seconds for her were just trying to figure out which mood I'm in. And she said that there were two different versions of me. One, just emotionally connected and like available to connect with others and in a good mood generally, and the other just low tones, no emotions, and I wasn't aware of that at all.
Yeah. Self-preservation mode.
Yeah, exactly. It's to protect yourself from whatever is overwhelming you right now.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't blame you. I don't blame myself.
Yeah.
Even though you might think it's terrible for others, then, or this is the first I've heard that it can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Because for me, I always come out of it in some way or another, usually in a painful way.
Do you want me to go into detail? I can. I don't mind just going into detail of why it becomes dangerous for me, because it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
So with my emotions, with my empathy, and with my depression, the most thing that keeps me grounded, if I get to the too extreme of when I'm depressed and have struggles, again, I guess trigger warning for anyone that struggles with depression. Feel free to pause or stop if you're not in the right frame of mind. For me, it is, again, if I get to the suicidal stage, then that usually occurs, or what stops me from doing anything, sorry, is that there's still a bit of empathy left. There's still that, like, how would my mum feel? How would others feel? It's always grounded me, and not in a guilt way, not in a like, oh, don't do this. I mean, to be fair, if it keeps me alive, then fair enough. But it's just a mechanism that I've used to keep me going. But when I'm in that robot mode, which I call it, or that detached mode, or self-preservation mode, the emotion's gone. So therefore, I can't empathize. I can't think about an emotion. There's no emotional attachment anymore. Emotional attachment to people is gone. So I can't go, I wonder how, like, I'll stop myself because it will hurt them. I no longer care or can care if I am depressed and suicidal. I no longer care if how it affects other people.
Yeah.
For me, again, that's the extreme version that I have to be careful to bring myself away from. It fascinates me. It's really, really interesting. Again, and it was horrible going through the experiences. It was, again, this is stuff that actually did happen and went through, and put my family through hell, put friends through hell. But coming out the other side of it, I had to learn to refine my emotions and connect with those again, and then learn how to have a robot mode that is also emotional still, or can, it sounds contradictory, but yeah, be able to do that so that I can be efficient and self-preservation, but also that I can still empathize to a degree and keep myself from going to that extreme.
I used to be too rational, as in not emotional enough, and I had to learn through painful situations how important emotions can be. Just one of them being you needed to be motivated to do anything, otherwise you'll just lie in bed all day. There's a linguistics professor who talked about this topic and it wasn't mainly about language. It was more about neurology, but they're closely connected. He said, in our Western view, we value people, like in the workplace, for example, we value people that are very rational, who use logic to make decisions. And so, is it ideal if we were all like Mr. Spock? To use an extreme example. And he said,
Yeah.
no, actually, emotions are necessary to be logical as well.
Yeah.
They all interact and in ways that I don't fully know about yet,
Yeah, it's hard.
but that just made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I guess yeah, emotions are part of the algorithm to be logical, I guess, because I guess a purely logical decisions are dangerous, can be dangerous.
Yeah.
So there has to be some level of emotion involved in that algorithm. Otherwise, we would be like mentality of like well, to be fair, we'd be okay with things like eugenics. We'd be okay with things like animal testing. We'd be okay with things like yeah, just torturing people for information and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We would be okay with it because it would be logical. And so actually having that emotion stops us from doing again, causing pain. Again, it's about pain on others, because that is it is, yeah, it seems wrong.
It's a very good point. We often hear philosophical arguments like, what is the greater good, or
Yeah,
or when politicians make decisions, they use finances to
yeah,
or just lust for revenge to make big decisions on our behalf. And I think, no, it's not what I want you to do.
yeah,
Maybe I enjoy the Asimov novels about interactions between humans and robots so much because they go into exactly these questions. How do you need to design a robot so that they improve life in general for humans and live with them in harmony? And you know, in Asimov's books, there are 3 laws of robotics, which are very basic, which make sense when you hear them, but when you go into everyday life, into detail, you see how they are still problematic, and it's really
yeah,
interesting to see. But I think now I should
yep. Go for it.
show the image that I have. My parents put me onto this. They went to a workshop on emergency preparedness,
Yeah,
and I thought it was going to be all about food storage, I don't know, tools that you can use in an emergency, just survival things. And it was in part, but a big part was also emotional preparedness. You know,
that's good.
how do you handle yourself and deal with others in a crisis? Because, as you know, a lot of us panic and lose control and do stupid things or
Yeah.
do whatever someone in authority tells them to do, which is also dangerous. Sometimes it has its place, but it can be dangerous.
Oh
And
yeah.
and so this is one of the handouts they got, just to give you, just make you aware of what is an emotion, because like you said, they can be very mixed. It can be very difficult to put them into words and to tell someone else what you're going through. But even just telling yourself what you're going through can be super helpful, so that you are more in control of yourself. So the pictures help a bit.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I actually like it a lot. It's very, very good.
And this isn't a perfect science. A lot of these
Of course.
emotions overlap, like angry and enraged.
Yeah.
Might just be a difference in intensity. I don't know. And different people have different interpretations for these, of course.
Yes.
Like ecstatic and excited.
Calm and content. Like, yeah, there's a lot of them that can pair up.
But it's normal that there are
Used and
several words
betrayed.
for the same or the similar or a similar thing.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's a good list at the bottom as well. Emotional self-regulation, identify your emotions. Yeah.
Identify your
is,
emotions, accept your
yeah,
emotions, focus your thoughts, act, and then share with others.
discuss. I guess it's like, again, the speed at which we could do these things is always, I guess, what we're aiming for, to go from the active to the automatic. I can't remember what it is, but like, to be able to, if you're put in a situation that, again, like you say, that is a stressful one emotionally, and there's risk involved if you don't act in the most effective way. Like, again, if like you panic or you just comply to someone else's way of doing things, that can be very dangerous.
Let's go into that automatic part of us again.
Yeah.
It is something in us. I think in part we're born with it, and in part, like I said, it comes from childhood experiences. What is its purpose before we do anything about it? Just from what we have in us already, what is it good for? Survival, right? We like to say the lizard brain helps us to escape a saber-toothed tiger.
Yep.
And it can definitely do that. Even parts of us, I mean, body parts, not involving the brain can do that.
They just kick into overdrive or whatever, or shut down, and not like.
And now let's talk about the learned automatic parts, the things that we pick up in childhood. I read that children are very good at suppressing feelings and signals from their body when it would overwhelm them. And so they learn to do that in a situation that seems dangerous to them, like if a parent shouts at them.
Yeah.
Or if they have a strong need for something and no one listens to them, they might learn to cry or to shout about their needs very loudly. And then you just integrate that. You don't know what happened. It just happens. You don't even know that it happened until 20 years later it pops up.
The pathways are built very quickly. So if you experience this thing over and over, or even just a short time as a child, it's just going to solidify that behavior straight away. Whereas as adults, it takes a long time to like learn things and
to
that's why it
unlearn
takes
things.
And to that's like literally, I was about to say, that's to deprogram, to unlearn those behaviors that were so quickly established and so strongly connected as children. Because we experienced a lot of stuff very quickly as a kid, and especially in our societies over the last, like, I don't know, 50 to 100 years, there's a lot more chaos, a lot more variation, a lot more interaction in our Western societies than if you go back 300 years, where sometimes all you'd do is spend your whole life on a farm, go to the other village every so often for market, and that would be a lot.
That's the extent of how far you would travel.
So your emotional experiences and interactions would be the same, because you're still interacting with people, but they'd be less heightened as ours are. And again, that's why we live in a society of anxiety and panic and fear, because again, we're overstimulated by the constant changes, the constant new philosophies and new ideas, and like even just in this country, go back 30 years and it was fine to smack your child. Like, it wasn't an issue. It was like, you know what, that's fine. If your child's misbehaving, give a pat on the bum, whatever, or on the hand, and that teaches them that that was wrong. But now we understand that, again, that's not a healthy emotional response to be doing.
I heard there are countries, I can think of one in Africa, where it's still normal and accepted to smack your wife. And that if you don't do it, then you're not being manly.
Oh, it's just horrible. It's so disgusting. I know I shouldn't judge, but it's just like, that's pain establishing. There's so much better ways to do it. Like,
so there is definitely an advantage to being exposed to so many ideas and philosophies, because then you can pick out the good ones for yourself.
Yeah. What else was on that list?
Yeah, I'm kind of having a stupor again.
It's all right. No, I just wanted to see what was on that list again, because there was two sides to the list. That what you
Sides?
showed. Like
Was there structure to that?
there's the one, and then how to help people experiencing emotional
Oh,
distress.
okay.
I was just
Yeah, on the
curious.
left side is how to help yourself,
Yeah.
and on the right side, how to help others, which is obviously something very different
Yes.
because you cannot fully understand what they're going through. And so if you tell them what to do,
Yeah.
then you're wrong automatically.
Well, it's interesting. Again, this is what that ideology really bugged me for a long time, and I couldn't figure out why. And I eventually did figure it out. But like, so there was a period of time, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago, going through different therapies and talking to a lot of people, and they were like, "Oh, you can never fully understand someone, and so don't say, I understand." And in my head, in my head, it just felt wrong. There was something internally. Whenever someone said that, it just didn't feel right in my being, and it took a while to be like to figure it out. And actually, no, maybe we can't understand the specific circumstances, but we don't need to. That's not what's important. What is important is the emotional connection. Again, we all experience happiness, confusion, panic, anxiousness, anger, like all this stuff that's on the spectrum of emotions. And so you can say, like, oh, you're feeling rage or you're feeling disappointment. You know what? I understand that. And that connects people. That stops people from feeling alone, because it's very dangerous. Even though it empowers people short term to feel like no one understands, because it feels unique to us. It feels like, oh, okay, there's something that goes on inside us that for some reason makes us feel good. Not good, that's the wrong word, but makes us justified if we're alone in this experience. For some reason, some reason there's part of us that wants to feel that feels like, oh, it's unique to us. And in a way, yes, it is unique because we're experiencing it. But then the danger is that cuts you off from connection. That cuts you off from, and that makes you alone. And then that just exasperates bad mental health. So again, the way that I figured it out was actually, again, making sure people know that they are emotionally connected to us.
All right, that's a good differentiation. And it says here, fortunately, it doesn't say show understanding or be understanding.
Shows compassion.
Show compassion. And the compassion is a Latin word that, if you take it apart, co is with and passion is suffering.
Yeah.
So if you suffer with someone, and I'm not good at this, but I've noticed a difference when when someone is telling me about a negative experience they're having, and I say, I don't say, oh, I've been through something similar, I know exactly what it's like, but rather I say, oh, that must be difficult.
Yes.
Or I don't know the perfect words, but
keeping it about them and not about ourselves. Like,
yeah.
But then again, it's complex. Like I say in pretty much every episode, the specificity, the specifics of the situation is very important, because actually some people don't need compassion. Some people, if you were showing them an emotional response to a situation, that would actually hurt them more. Some people just need look, you got this, suck it up and get on with it. You have to be very sensitive to what that person's needs, because doing that to someone that doesn't need that is very dangerous.
Right.
But yeah, you need to be able to understand what you do. You need to understand the person's behavioral norms to be able to help them help themselves in the most specific way.
In the book, Men Are From Mars and Women From Venus, it says that sometimes the other person just needs you to listen. And sometimes they want advice. And that's kind of what you were going into there. And it can be difficult to tell.
But it's very difficult.
And ideally, the person with the need tells you explicitly what they need.
Well, you ask. Again, that's the lesson that I've learned, is you ask. I say to people, like, do you want me to listen? Or do you want me to tell you some hard truths? Or do you want distraction? Do you want 10 minutes of chatting? Because again, if you talk too much about something, most people, it leads them to get self-involved, get a victim mentality, and lose themselves in being the victim. And so it's very, again, it's so complex and so difficult to find the middle ground, the center of these emotional responses. Because I've had many friends go into anxiety spirals because they've talked about things too much and shared their emotions too much. And it's a difficult middle ground that requires all that we talk about. Again, knowing ourselves will help us know people.
Yes.
And, that's kind of our journey, isn't it? It's knowing these emotional emotions in ourselves will just automatically have a benefit effect.
But what's the difference between a thought and an emotion?
Yeah, here
the actual topic.
Yeah.
So I've noticed just in the language of different countries that I like to say, I think that is warm today.
Yeah.
And someone else might say, I feel like it's warm today, like especially Americans.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand that that's a sensation.
Yep.
Well, there's another ambiguity. Feel can be used for emotions and for sensations.
Yep.
That's even that's also in my language. So even though I'm slightly different from Americans, there's still tons of ambiguity. But I always notice how Americans, well, let's just say the American streamers on Twitch that I follow, they say, like my age, they say a lot. I feel like I could have beaten that level, or I feel like I could have done that better. And I think that's not a feeling. Why do you keep saying I feel? If I were in your situation, I would say I think that I could have done that better.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer. Well, first of all, it's a cultural thing. They just say I've even read about this. I feel that, or I feel like something goes back a long way, at least decades in American English. When someone judges something to be the case, in American English, you can say, I felt that this was the case. And it just means in my opinion, or in my perspective, or in my estimation, this was the case. I often have to translate that for me because it confuses me and kind of irritates me as well. Because, well, I'm not sure why exactly.
Well, it's just blurry. It's so blurry. It's chaotic. Like language is meant to clarify things, but when we interchange, because I use think and feel interchangeably all the time, like and I am aware of it to a degree, and again also intrigued by it because again, like they're two very different things that are used in the same context.
You say language is there to clarify things. I think it can be just the opposite sometimes. We want to be precise in what we say.
Yep.
So we might use something as vague as possible to increase the chance of being correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I've noticed that about like as well.
Yes.
Whenever someone talks about a measure of something, something quantitative, they will say, I had like 5 balls of ice cream.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you can count. Like you should be able to know the difference between 4, 5, and 6. Just say exactly the number of ice cream balls you had. And then there are situations where it's impossible to be exact. For example, the inflation rate this month was 8.6%.
Yeah.
And when someone says was like 8.6%, I can understand that. I would prefer him to say roundabout or approximately, but okay, like is the common word nowadays. So I think that's one of the reasons that like has crept into the English language a lot recently.
Because we don't like being wrong, so we therefore put a.
And when you say I feel this is the case, then you are saying, I don't know if it's really the case. It's just a feeling I have. And therefore I don't need to be exact. My feelings are my feelings, whether they represent the reality is another matter.
Again, we manipulate language to protect ourselves. Yeah.
So that's some of the linguistic perspective on that question.
I love that. No, I love that. That's good.
But why should we care about differentiating, at least for ourselves? What is the difference about thinking and feeling and sensory feeling?
Because how we respond to them, I guess, and how we use them, maybe. Don't know,
Right.
actually.
Yeah, because if you want to understand yourself better, then you should know which part of you are you using right now, or which part does what, and how do they work together. A thought is, I don't know, it's something rational. It's a claim or a proposition about what is going on. And a feeling is, I would say, more of a reaction. And this is where opinions can differ, because including men and women, because some people just view the world in a different way than me, right? I'm a very intellectual person that way. But you might be more like, I associate a feeling with a certain event or person.
Yeah, some people like say emotion. Again, we talk about chemicals in the brain causing emotion and whatever else. Some people say like emotion, like a spiritual thing, it's part of the soul, and like there's different ways to define what it actually is.
Well, maybe
because if it's all just chemical, then yeah, it opens up a whole different can of worms.
No, I've had questions about that as well. Remember how I said at the beginning of the episode, we think of spiritual matters sometimes in a mystical way,
Yes.
in an Eastern way, and sometimes in a scientific way, a Western way, and both have their validity.
Yep.
You know, sometimes it seems to me that you take away the legitimacy of some spiritual thing by discovering what the brain is doing physically.
Yeah.
But still, it's super important. I mean, both have their value and should not take away from the other.
Bingo. Yep.
So when you just said that a feeling can have a chemical component and a spiritual component,
yeah,
they're both true.
Yep.
And there might also be more going on.
Well, again, they're true in the sense that that's what we believe. Because somebody else will be like, completely disagree with that statement and be like, no, it's only chemical, it's just all just chemicals. And someone will be like, oh no, it's all just spiritual, and just like the chemicals are like just a vessel for the emotional, spiritual experience.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yeah, I know someone who says everything is about energy.
I do that a lot. I say that as well.
And I'm still struggling to figure out what that means. I want to, because it sounds real and legitimate to me, but I'm still so stuck in the world of thoughts and feelings. But he says that a feeling is something that happens to you.
Yep.
And he goes further than most of us would and says a thought is something that happens to you. Whereas I typically would have said thoughts are something I control, you know, as in free will, and feelings are something that show my reaction. So they're the passive part. And it's wrong. The more I think about it, the more I meditate on it, the more I realize how automatic thoughts are as well. And that's a huge question for me, because you know, if I think back, there are lots of episodes on this podcast where I talk about free will and, you know, ask the person I'm interviewing their view. And it's super important to me and my definition of my existence. I cannot imagine having no free will.
Yeah.
And I sometimes feel my life is threatened when it does seem to be the case that I have no free will. So,
yeah,
but I don't have the answer yet.
Again, it can lead to an identity crisis quite quickly in those situations. And what's the right phrase? A trial of faith, or trial of whatever the right word is. Whatever the right phrase is. And like, again, the external emotional thought just happening automatically wherever it comes from is, again, as much in the past I've hated the statements, it's up to us how to respond. Whatever external source is causing an emotion, or again internal, but we don't know the layers of our existence enough to know what's going on all around us and whatever. It's all meta. But whatever the case, we're learning how to respond to it and learning how to deal with, again, the emotion, deal with the thought, deal with the sensation in a way that is healthy for us as an individual.
Here's an idea on that, because here we're getting into territory where I'm not experienced and I'm still trying to figure it out. The programming we have inside of us is the bridge between the stimulus and our response, right? And you say it would be nice for us to have more control over that, what happens in that gap. Well, it's so fast that I don't know if we could reason our way through that gap. But what we can do is change the programming. And then for the future, we will have a program in place of how to deal with that. I think that is one way to make
that
progress.
Makes sense. That's my belief and thought on that situation.
To give you an example, I want to be less reactive. I want to not turn to anger as quickly or at all, ideally. And so I do that. To get there, I remember situations where I do get angry, and the impulse that triggered me, and then I try to figure out from there, what is my belief about myself and the world that was violated in that moment, and is it a belief? And once I hopefully get that, make that like extracted from my subconscious into my consciousness, I can then think about it rationally and deliberately and decide for myself whether I want to keep it or not. Now, this decision doesn't mean that it will change from what it was to what I want it to be overnight. It's a process,
takes
right?
Years. It can take years.
Some people like to use repetition in order to reinforce that. I don't like that so much, but but it is also a basic thing about the brain, right? If you want to implement a new thought pattern, then it's like walking through tall grass. There is a path that has been trodden many times before, and therefore the grass is low there or gone. But now you want to create a new path that is contrary to it, and so you have to keep walking through the tall grass over and over until it becomes small or
talked
gone.
about it before. Again, I use exposure therapy quite a lot, or just anything that I feel like I can't handle. I find a healthy, safe way to expose myself to it and experience it within my limitations, as long as that limitation is pushing, as long as that limitation is making me experience it, and then I get accustomed to it over time, and then I push it a bit more, and then I push it a bit more, and it's difficult because, again, quantifying how much I can handle is difficult. And so there might be a relapse, there might be okay, back to square one, but then I'll get to that point a lot quicker because I've been training myself, kind of thing. Again, that's just a way. Again, there's lots of different ways. Signposting, there's loads of things out there that are ways to help with healthy, I guess, emotional and thought reaction. How to react in a way that's healthy and not impulsive and instinctive. Because, again, the initial emotions, initial thoughts can be impulsive. They cannot, even the thoughts. Because, again, like, they're all combined. Like, when you have a thought, it often triggers the emotions response. And when you have an emotion, I guess, it also leads to lots of different thoughts. So yeah, it's very complex, very complex.
It helps to talk about it, your progress with others who can at least a little bit understand what you're going through, because then they're able to tell you 5 years later, look how far you've come. Yes, because often we have a negative filter and don't see the progress.
That is a really good point. The reward system is so important. Like we tend to just, we're not doing well enough, and we should be here. We didn't get here when we wanted to, or we're still struggling, and it's been so long. And a change in perspective of time is really important. Of long, yeah, we can be brutal with ourselves because we haven't got there quick enough or whatever. But there's no time scale with this. It's just it's all in our own time. Two, again, we're critical of ourselves. So having, like you say, having someone to just be like, okay, relativeness here, like you have gone from here to here, that's amazing. You may think someone else has got there faster or doesn't have to deal with it or whatever, but that doesn't matter. The fact that we as an individual have come as far as we have, like, again, us two, in the last decade, we have gone through insane levels of improvement and self-awareness, and again, it's not necessarily quantifiable in a nice easy scale, but it's like we can see it in each other because we've known each other for this length of time. And it's important, again, as you say, to share with others, people that we trust, so that we can actually get that positive confirmation.
Another way to deal with a deficient rewarding system is to redefine the goal and what is valuable to yourself. You might feel like you're not achieving anything because you have such goals as getting a promotion or getting recognized from a certain person or from a certain amount of people, like likes on social media.
Oh yes, good times. Yeah.
And that's normal. We want these positive signals. They feel good, but they're not. As you get older, you realize that they're not sustainable, and
they become addictive.
Yeah, they have a lot of negative sides to them. So what would you say, as we finish this episode, what are some things you do strive for? How has your goal shifted in the past years?
Oh, interesting question. Like, again, just the more I realize that life is about connection and community. Like, again, we're drilled to have this, achieve house, achieve marriage, achieve whatever, that are all things that actually don't lead to happiness. They can, but they don't necessarily lead to happiness. We're taught that that's what's going to make you happy. Have a well esteemed job and a happy family, but actually, at the end of the day, happiness comes from inside, and that's what we're trying to get to with these podcasts, with our experiences, is that the change from those focus to this focus of just actually finding peace and happiness in the now. Again, it's such a cliche statement at the moment, but it's so true. And just now, am I happy with what I have? Do I feel like I'm lucky for what I have? And if you don't, it requires time, energy of going through again the thoughts, the emotions, and realizing that our emotions can be our best friend and not our enemy. Same with our thoughts.
Yeah, and for me, I would summarize my goal as freedom. Now, like I've probably mentioned before, freedom has a negative and a positive definition to it. I want to be free of pain and other negative things, and I can do that by learning more about myself, by learning where do these negative emotions come from, what thoughts lead to them. And the positive definition would be I want to explore. I want to learn. Someone described me as a sponge, soaking up all the knowledge, and that knowledge is not just rational. It can be knowledge through experience as well. That's something I'm tending more towards now, because being only rational means you end up in a house built up just by ideas without ever testing whether they're just theory or actuality. And so freedom is what I'm going for.